I spent 6 months planning the perfect celebration. I spent 3 weeks planning its destruction. The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers. 200 guests lifted champagne glasses. A string quartet played the song we danced to on our wedding night 5 years earlier. My husband thought he was walking into a vow renewal. What he didn't know was that the video waiting behind him wasn't a montage of our marriage. It was evidence. Evidence of a second life, a second home, a second family. And in less than 10 minutes, every person who loved him was going to see it, including me. Because the hardest part wasn't exposing his lie. The hardest part was sitting beside him while I still loved the man I was about to destroy. The moment I nodded to the technician at the back of the room, there was no turning back.
5 years after our wedding, everyone said we were the couple people envied. The kind of couple who survived difficult seasons. The kind who still reached for each other's hands in public. The kind who looked permanent. Standing inside the ballroom that evening, I almost believed it myself. The venue overlooked the harbor. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected hundreds of tiny candle flames. White roses covered every table. The air smelled faintly of vanilla frosting, fresh flowers, and expensive wine. Guests drifted between conversations. My sister adjusted place cards. My mother fussed over centerpieces. The photographer moved like a shadow through the crowd. Everything looked beautiful. That was the problem. Beautiful things can hide rot surprisingly well. Across the room, my husband Daniel laughed with a group of friends. He looked relaxed. Comfortable. Certain. The same confidence that had attracted me years ago now felt different. Like watching someone perform a role they had rehearsed too many times. When he noticed me watching, he raised his glass. Almost showtime, he called. I smiled back. The smile felt practiced. He didn't notice. That would become a pattern. 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting alone in our home office. Rain tapped against the windows. Daniel was supposedly attending a 3-day business conference in another state. I remember because I had ordered takeout and planned to spend the evening organizing old family photos for the vow renewal video. Simple task. Mindless task. The kind of thing married people do together after years of shared history. I opened our cloud storage account. Thousands of photos appeared. Vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings, random selfies. A life documented one image at a time. Then I noticed a folder I didn't recognize. No label. No date. Just a string of numbers. I almost ignored it. Almost. The first photograph looked harmless. Daniel standing beside a lake. Different jacket. Different haircut. A little older than the image date suggested. I frowned. Then I clicked the next photo. And everything changed. A woman stood beside him. Her hand resting naturally on his arm. Not casually. Not accidentally. Comfortably. The way people touch someone they've known for years. My stomach tightened. I clicked again. Another picture. Then another. Then another. A birthday cake. Matching decorations. A family picnic. A Christmas tree. A little girl sitting on Daniel's shoulders. Smiling directly into the camera. The kind of smile children reserve for someone they trust completely. Someone important. Someone familiar. Someone who belongs. For several seconds, I genuinely believed there had to be an explanation. A cousin. A friend. A charity event. Anything. Human beings are surprisingly creative when trying to protect their reality. Then I reached a photograph that removed every possible excuse. The little girl held a handmade card. Across the front, written in colorful marker. Best dad ever! I stared at those 3 words until they blurred. The rain outside seemed louder. The room felt smaller. My heartbeat became impossible to ignore. And still, I kept scrolling. Because some part of me needed the pain to become undeniable. Hours passed. I barely moved. Photo after photo revealed pieces of a life I had never seen. School events. Weekend trips. Holiday dinners. Years of memories. Not a mistake. Not an affair that happened once. A complete parallel existence. Built carefully. Maintained consistently. Protected deliberately. The realization arrived slowly. That was the cruel part. Not like a knife. Like a tide. Relentless. Certain. Impossible to stop. Around midnight, Daniel called. His name lit up my phone. For a moment, I simply stared at it. Then I answered. Hey, he said warmly. How's everything at home? The question almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. The ease in his voice. The confidence. The assumption that I knew nothing. I'm fine, I said. A pause. You sound tired. I've been working on the video. Don't stay up too late. His voice carried genuine concern. Or something that sounded identical to it. That haunted me more than the photographs. Because I couldn't decide which version of him was real. The man checking on me. Or the man hiding an entire family. After the call ended, I sat alone in darkness. The office computer illuminated the room with a cold blue glow. I should have confronted him immediately. Any reasonable person would have. But something stopped me. Not revenge. Not yet. Confusion. I needed certainty. I needed context. I needed to understand how a person could divide himself into 2 separate lives and still sleep peacefully at night. So I stayed silent. And I started paying attention. The next morning, the vow renewal planning meeting continued exactly as scheduled. The florist discussed arrangements. The event coordinator reviewed timelines. Daniel sat beside me making jokes. Every now and then he squeezed my hand. A gesture that once felt reassuring. Now it felt like a question I couldn't answer. Who was this man? Had I ever actually known him? Or had I simply known the version he wanted me to see? By the end of that week, I had learned something unexpected. Secrets don't usually collapse all at once. They unravel through details. Tiny inconsistencies. Small absences. Unexplained gaps. And once you start noticing them, you can't stop. I began finding them everywhere. The business trips. The unexplained weekends. The phone calls he took outside. The receipts. The calendar entries. The strange patterns that suddenly made perfect sense. Piece by piece, a hidden story emerged. And with every discovery, one question grew louder. How many people already knew? Back in the ballroom, the quartet transitioned into a slower song. Guests found their seats. The evening program was about to begin. Daniel adjusted his tie and leaned close. "You nervous?" he asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The familiar face. The smile. The man I'd spent years building a future beside. Then I glanced toward the projection screen at the far end of the room. The screen that no longer contained our wedding video. Only the truth. "I'm surprisingly calm," I said. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't lying. As the lights began to dim, my phone vibrated inside my purse. A message appeared from a number I didn't recognize. Just one sentence. One sentence that changed everything I thought I knew. "He's been lying to both of us." And beneath it, a photograph I had never seen before. A photograph that suggested the second family wasn't the full story. Not even close. The message arrived less than 3 minutes before the video presentation was supposed to begin. I read it once. Then twice. Then a third time. The ballroom around me dissolved into a blur of candlelight, polite laughter, and clinking glasses. My attention locked onto the photograph attached beneath the words. "He's been lying to both of us." The photo showed Daniel. But it wasn't the Daniel I recognized from the cloud folder. Nor the Daniel sitting beside me. This image had been taken recently. Very recently. He stood outside a small suburban house I had never seen before. Standing beside him was the woman from the photographs. The woman I had assumed was his secret partner. Only now she wasn't smiling. She looked exhausted. Worried. And in her hand was a folded document. The timestamp showed the picture had been taken 4 days earlier. 4 days while Daniel was supposedly attending meetings in Chicago. My stomach tightened. Because something about the image felt wrong. Not romantic. Not affectionate. Not like a happy hidden family. It looked like an argument caught in progress. Like two people discussing something neither wanted. And suddenly I wasn't sure I understood the story anymore. A server passed carrying champagne. Guests settled into their seats. Across the room, the event coordinator gave me a subtle signal. 5 minutes. The presentation would begin in 5 minutes. I glanced toward Daniel. He was chatting with my father. Relaxed. Comfortable. Oblivious. Meanwhile, my pulse hammered beneath my ribs. I opened the message again. No name. No explanation. Just that sentence. And then another message appeared. Call me before you play anything. I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to. 3 weeks of planning had led to this moment. The evidence was real. The photos were real. The lies were real. Yet something about the sender's urgency unsettled me. So I stood. I need a minute, I told Daniel. You okay? Just checking on something. He smiled. Don't work tonight. The irony almost hurt. The ballroom doors closed behind me. Immediately the music became muffled. The hallway outside felt cooler. Quieter. More honest. I called the number. The woman answered before the first ring finished. Thank God. Her voice sounded strained. Like someone who hadn't slept properly in days. I said nothing. Neither did she. For a few seconds we simply listened to each other breathe. Then she spoke. You're Olivia, right? My throat tightened. Who are you? A pause. Then words I never expected. My name is Rachel. The woman from the photographs. I leaned against the wall, suddenly grateful nobody could see my face. How did you get my number? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Her voice cracked slightly. I didn't know if you'd believe me. My silence encouraged her to continue. You found the photos. Not a question. A statement. I closed my eyes. And now you're planning something. I looked through the glass doors into the ballroom. Guests laughing. Servers moving between tables. A celebration waiting to become a disaster. Yes. Rachel exhaled heavily. Then came the sentence that stopped me cold. I thought I was his wife too. For a moment, I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. The hallway seemed to tilt. We had a ceremony 7 years ago. Her voice sounded hollow. Defeated. Not defensive. Not manipulative. Just tired. We never legally filled everything because of circumstances at the time. My mind raced. Nothing fit. Nothing made sense. The story I'd built over 3 weeks suddenly fractured. You knew about me? Not until last month. The answer came instantly. Too instantly to be rehearsed. One of his emails synced to a shared tablet. I heard her swallow. That's when I found photographs of you. The realization settled between us. Neither of us had discovered an affair. We had discovered each other. The hallway felt unbearably quiet. I thought about the birthday pictures. The Christmas photos. The vacations. The little girl. All the evidence I'd interpreted through the lens of betrayal. Maybe I had been right. Just not completely right. Why contact me now? I asked. Rachel laughed bitterly. Not because anything was funny. Because reality had become absurd. Because 2 weeks ago I confronted him. My heart skipped. What happened? He denied everything. Of course he did. He said the photos were old. Another lie. He promised he'd explain. Another lie. He disappeared for 3 days. Silence. Then she added, and yesterday I found out there's another woman. I nearly dropped the phone. Another woman. Not me. Not Rachel. Someone else. The photograph suddenly made sense. The argument. The stress. The documents. Rachel wasn't protecting Daniel. She was confronting him. Just like I had planned to. Only she got there first. And discovered something even worse. Inside the ballroom, applause erupted. The MC had started speaking. The schedule was moving forward. Time was running out. Rachel's voice softened. Listen carefully. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. The person sitting in that ballroom isn't expecting accountability. She paused. He's expecting another performance. The words landed heavily. Because she was right. For years, Daniel had survived by controlling information. Different stories. Different audiences. Different versions of himself. And every person involved had been isolated. Separated. Unable to compare notes. Until now. I glanced through the glass again. Daniel stood near the stage. Smiling. Accepting congratulations. looking every bit like a devoted husband. Nobody saw the fractures beneath the surface. Nobody knew. Yet. "Rachel?" I said quietly. "What?" "If I stop this tonight," she interrupted. "Don't stop it." I frowned. "What?" "Just don't do it the way you planned." A chill moved through me. Because suddenly I realized something. The video wasn't really about exposing Daniel. It was about proving I wasn't crazy. Proving the betrayal was real. Proving what I'd seen. But now there were two witnesses. Maybe more. And public humiliation wasn't the most powerful thing available anymore. Truth was complete truth. Not partial truth. Not emotional truth. Actual truth. The ballroom lights dimmed further. The presentation was seconds away. The coordinator searched for me near the entrance. Confused. Concerned. Waiting. I looked at my reflection in the glass doors. 3 weeks earlier, I would have stormed into that room desperate for answers. Now I wanted something else. The full story. Every piece. Every lie. Every hidden connection. No shortcuts. No assumptions. No mistakes. Because if Daniel had built multiple lives, then tonight wasn't the ending. It was only the beginning. My phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. This one from Daniel. Just 4 words? "Where did you go?" I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. Not from him. From an unknown number. A different unknown number. Attached was a photo. Daniel. A woman I had never seen before. And a teenage boy. The caption underneath read, "You don't know about us either." And suddenly I realized the room wasn't big enough to hold the truth that was the first thing I felt wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. A deep, bone-level exhaustion that settled into my chest the moment I saw the second message. "You don't know about us either." For weeks I had been trying to make sense of one hidden life. Now another one had appeared. And judging by the age of the teenage boy in the photograph, this wasn't recent. This was history. Years of it. Maybe decades. Inside the ballroom, the master of ceremonies was introducing our vow renewal video. Guests turned toward the giant projection screen. The room darkened. Applause echoed softly. Everything was happening exactly according to schedule. Except nothing was happening the way I had planned. I stood alone in the hallway staring at my phone. One woman believed she was his wife. Another woman was claiming an entirely different relationship. And Daniel was standing 30 feet away smiling for photographs. The contrast felt surreal. Almost theatrical. Like watching a stage play while knowing the theater was quietly catching fire. The second number called. I answered immediately. A woman spoke before I could say anything. "You got my message." Her voice was older than Rachel's. Steady. Controlled. The voice of someone who had spent years surviving disappointment. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Denise." No hesitation. No drama. Just facts. The way people speak when they're too tired to perform emotions anymore. "How long have you known Daniel?" The line went quiet. Then she answered, 21 years. I nearly stopped breathing. 21. My marriage was 5 years old. Rachel's relationship stretched back 7. And now there was Denise. 21 years. Nothing about this situation resembled an affair anymore. It resembled an entire hidden architecture. A life built on separate rooms. Separate realities. Separate truths. Did he marry you too? I asked. Her answer came instantly. Then what were you? A soft laugh escaped her. Not amused. Just defeated. That's the question I spent 15 years trying to answer. The sentence lingered. Heavy. Painfully human. Because sometimes betrayal isn't just deception. Sometimes it's uncertainty. Years spent trying to understand what role you actually played in someone else's story. Inside the ballroom, the opening frame of the video appeared on screen. I could see it through the partially opened doors. Guests smiled. My family watched attentively. Daniel sat in the front row. Relaxed. Confident. Certain he knew what came next. The irony almost made me dizzy. Because for the first time in years, he was the only person in the room who didn't understand the situation. Denise continued. He told me you were all exes. My stomach dropped. What? Rachel too. I closed my eyes. Of course he had. The simplest lies are often the most effective. Keep everyone isolated. Give each person a slightly different version of reality. Make sure nobody compares stories. And eventually the lies maintain themselves. No effort required. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. 2 years earlier. Daniel standing in our kitchen, answering a phone call. Stepping outside halfway through the conversation. Returning 15 minutes later. When I asked who it was, he smiled casually. Wrong number. At the time, I accepted the answer. Now I wondered how many wrong numbers had names. Faces. Entire lives attached to them. The coordinator hurried toward me. Olivia, the video. I know. You need to be inside. I looked through the doorway. The screen glowed against hundreds of faces. The presentation had reached its introduction sequence. Within minutes, the evidence montage would begin. The version I had spent weeks preparing. The version built around only part of the truth. Not all of it. Part of me still wanted to press play. And everything. Expose him immediately. Another part understood something important. If I acted now, I would only reveal what I knew 3 weeks ago. Not what I knew today. The difference mattered. Because this had stopped being about revenge. Now it was about reality. And reality was still unfolding. There's something else, Denise said. Her voice had changed. More hesitant. More careful. People only sound like that when they're approaching something dangerous. What? I asked. A pause. Then, someone warned me about him years ago. My grip tightened around the phone. Who? I never found out. The hallway suddenly felt colder. Why are you telling me this now? Because yesterday. She stopped. Then started again. Yesterday someone contacted me. The air seemed to leave my lungs. What did they say? Denise exhaled slowly. They said there were 4 of us. 4. Not 3. 4. The number echoed through my head. Rachel. Denise. Me. And someone else. Someone still unseen. Someone still silent. Inside the ballroom, laughter rippled through the audience. The opening segment of the presentation was finishing. Soon the footage would transition. Soon everything would change. One way or another. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel. A text message. 3 words. I'm outside. Another message followed. Not alone. I stared at the screen. Then looked through the front entrance windows. A black SUV had just pulled into the parking area. The headlights cut across the pavement. 3 figures stepped out. Rachel. A woman I didn't recognize. And a teenage boy. The same boy from Denise's photograph. My pulse accelerated. Not from fear. From realization. For weeks I had imagined confronting Daniel alone. One woman. One betrayal. One story. But real life rarely arranges itself that neatly. Truth arrives in pieces. Messy pieces. Complicated pieces. Human pieces. And right now, those pieces were walking toward the ballroom entrance. The front doors opened. Warm air drifted inside. Rachel entered first. Behind her came the teenage boy. Nervous. Uncertain. Trying to appear brave. Then the third figure stepped through the doorway. The fourth woman. The one none of us had met. The one nobody had mentioned before. The one who looked directly at me from across the lobby and whispered 4 words that made my blood run cold. He knows we're here. Before I could respond, shouting erupted from inside the ballroom. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just one shocked voice. Then another. Then silence. A terrible silence. The kind that spreads through a crowded room when something completely unexpected appears on a screen. Something nobody planned. Something nobody can immediately explain. I turned toward the ballroom. The video had started. But not the version I created. Somehow, someone had replaced it. And whatever was playing now had already changed everything. The silence inside the ballroom lasted only a few seconds. But it felt much longer. Because silence has weight when hundreds of people are sharing it at the same time. I pushed through the doors. Rachel followed. The teenage boy stayed close behind her. The fourth woman remained near the entrance, scanning the room as if she expected someone to run. Nobody noticed us. Every eye was fixed on the projection screen, including Daniel's. And for the first time that night, he looked afraid. Not nervous. Not uncomfortable. Afraid. The expression hit me harder than I expected. Because throughout our marriage, Daniel always seemed composed. He could talk his way through arguments. Smooth over misunderstandings. Redirect difficult conversations. Confidence was his natural habitat. But as he stared at the screen, something fundamental had cracked. I looked up. The video wasn't the one I had prepared. It wasn't our wedding footage. It wasn't Rachel's photographs. It wasn't evidence from Denise. Instead, a recorded interview was playing. A woman sat in a plain office. No dramatic music. No emotional editing. Just a woman speaking directly to a camera. I didn't recognize her. Neither did anyone else. At first, then Daniel stood so suddenly, his chair tipped backward. And suddenly I knew. He knew her. Very well. The woman on screen appeared to be in her late 60s. Her eyes, a face marked by years of disappointment. She looked into the camera and spoke calmly. I was asked to record this in case I was never believed. The room remained perfectly silent. Even the servers had stopped moving. I am Daniel Carter's mother. A collective gasp moved through the audience. Daniel froze. Completely froze. My heartbeat thundered inside my ears. Nobody had mentioned his mother. Not Rachel. Not Denise. Not anyone. Daniel rarely discussed his family. Over the years, he always described his childhood vaguely. Difficult. Complicated. Painful. I never pressed him. Now I wished I had. The woman continued. My son learned very early how to become whoever people needed him to be. No accusation. No anger. Just sadness. The kind sadness that only comes after years of acceptance. He wasn't born cruel. The statement surprised me. She paused before continuing. But he became addicted to admiration. Daniel's hands clenched. His face had gone pale. Around him, relatives exchanged confused glances. Friends shifted uncomfortably. Nobody understood where this was going. Not yet. The recording continued. His mother described decades of behavior. Not crimes. Not sensational revelations. Patterns. Always patterns. Different friendships. Different identities. Different stories. Constant reinvention. A need to be loved by everyone. Even if it required lying to all of them. The room listened. Not because the story was shocking. Because it explained everything. An explanation can be more devastating than accusation. Then came the moment that changed the atmosphere completely. His mother looked directly into the camera. I know about the women. The room stiffened. Daniel closed his eyes. Just briefly, as if hearing a sentence he'd been dreading for years. I learned about them gradually. Her voice shook. I confronted him many times. Another pause. And every time he promised he would tell the truth. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound came from the projector. And every time he created another lie. I looked toward Rachel. Tears filled her eyes. Not dramatic tears. Quiet tears. The kind that appear when confusion finally becomes certainty. Beside her, the teenage boy stared at the floor. Processing realities no child should have to process. Across the room, Denise had arrived unnoticed. She stood near the back. Arms folded tightly. Holding herself together. Barely. The video ended. For 3 long seconds, the screen went black. Then a final message appeared. Simple white text. No music. No effects. No manipulation. Just words. The truth belongs to everyone affected by it. And then the screen went dark. Completely dark. The room remained frozen. Nobody knew what to do first. Ask questions. Leave. Cry. Pretend nothing happened. Human beings rarely rehearse for moments like these. Then Daniel finally stood. Slowly, carefully. The entire room watched, waiting, expecting. For years he had controlled every narrative, every version, every explanation. Now he had one final opportunity. He looked at me first, then Rachel, then Denise, then the fourth woman. Finally, the teenage boy. The audience disappeared. For a brief moment, it became only the people most affected by his choices. The people he had worked hardest to keep apart. Now standing together, looking directly at him. Without filters. Without distance. Without lies. I don't know where to start. His voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard. Nobody answered. I never meant. He stopped. Because even he seemed to realize how meaningless those words sounded. The sentence collapsed before it could finish. For the first time all evening, Daniel had no script. What happened next surprised everyone. Especially me. Nobody screamed. Nobody created a scene. Nobody threw drinks. Nobody delivered a dramatic speech. Real life rarely works that way. Instead, Rachel asked one question. A simple question. How many versions of yourself are there? Daniel didn't answer. Because he couldn't. And his silence became the answer. The fourth woman quietly left. Denise followed minutes later. Neither seemed interested in arguments. Only distance. The teenage boy walked out beside Rachel. Before leaving, he looked at Daniel. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Just disappointment. That expression seemed to wound him more deeply than anything else that night. Eventually, the guests began leaving. Small groups. Quiet conversations. Awkward goodbyes. The ballroom emptied far faster than it had filled. Flowers remained. Candles remained. The expensive celebration remained. But the illusion was gone. Completely gone. Near midnight, only a handful of people remained. Staff members folded linens. Chairs scraped softly across the floor. Outside, rain had started falling against the harbor windows. I stood alone near the stage. Daniel approached slowly. Neither of us spoke immediately. There was nothing left worth performing. Finally, he asked, "What happens now?" The question lingered between us. Months earlier, I might have answered differently. Weeks earlier, too. But standing there, I realized something. This night had never been about punishment. It had been about clarity. And clarity had finally arrived. Painfully. Completely. Irreversibly. I looked around the empty ballroom. At the candles. The flowers. The giant screen. The remains of a celebration built on assumptions. Then I looked back at him. The truth happens now. My voice remained calm. Steady. Certain. The part without stories. For the first time all evening he nodded. Not because he agreed. Because he understood. There was nothing left to hide behind. I walked toward the exit. Not victorious. Not happy. Not healed. Just honest. And honesty felt strangely peaceful. Outside, the rain cooled the night air. Behind me, the ballroom lights slowly shut down one by one. Ahead of me, the future remained uncertain. Messy. Complicated. Human. but it belonged to reality. And after years of living inside someone else's fiction, reality was enough.